Good Monday morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. If you will, like, share, comment on the post, and then look at me. Not look at me. Look with me at uh, Acts chapter 18 and verse 22. And another one of those verses where you may look at it and think, well, there's not a lot of theology here. And maybe by the strictest definition of theology, there's not, but there is a good lesson for us. It says, when he had landed at Caesarea, he went up and greeted the church and then went down to Antioch. Paul, as he lands, his I guess you'd say his home church, his main church was at Antioch. But here it says, to begin with, he went up and greeted the church. And so most likely, doesn't say it, obviously, but most likely this is talking about the church at Jerusalem. Two things. One is generally when they would talk about, when Jews talked about going to Jerusalem, they would talk about going up to Jerusalem. And we see that he went up and greeted the church. And so the church, again, would most likely be the church in Jerusalem. We don't know anything that happened there. We don't know what was said or done or any of those things. But then after that, it says he goes down to Antioch. We don't know anything about that. The next words tell us he spent some time there. That's all we know. And obviously, he was probably just busting at the seams to tell him about his experience in going into Europe for the first time, how faithful God had been to him during that time. I wanted to share that news both with the church at what I guess you'd consider to be the mother church of Christianity in Jerusalem, but then his I guess mother church, his home church at Antioch. He had experienced God doing great things, and the second missionary journey he had been on, he wanted to share, the great results, what had happened with the apostles and the churches and people coming to know the Lord, and he would have been excited to share all that. And the lesson that stands out for me, and especially in the day in which we live, and maybe I'm going to be speaking really from a pastor's point of view, is his love for his church. Paul wanted to go to Antioch. He did the proper thing going to Jerusalem first, but then he wanted to get to Antioch. He wanted to go home. He wanted to get to his home church and tell his people, those who had supported him, those who had helped him, he wanted to get back and share the good news of what God has been doing. Paul had a responsibility, a sense of connection, a sense of longing, belonging to the church at Antioch, and that was his home church, and he wanted them to know what God had been doing. Again, maybe I'm just on my soapbox this morning from a pastor's point of view. But I see this as a real hindrance today in many people's Christian life, but also in the success of the church moving forward, is people they don't seem to have a real allegiance to their church. It doesn't take much to get them to stay out of their church. Doesn't take much to get them to change church. Doesn't take much to get them to go from one church to the other. And Paul had a loyalty, a bond to his church. And I would encourage you today to find a church. Not a perfect church, because there's not one. If they were perfect, they wouldn't let you in, wouldn't let me in. But find a church that you can be loyal to, that you have a bond to the people, that you give and receive. Many people, in 40 years now of ministry, I can't tell you the number of times that I've been talking to people who maybe had visited in the church or wanted to know something about the church, and they start asking questions about, well, what does the church offer? What does the church do here? What does the church do in this program? And I can only remember one time in all these years where somebody, when I was talking to them, their question to me is, well, if I become a part of your church, where can I plug in and where can I serve? Where can I help? Where can my gifts be used in the church? And so it's important to have a church that feeds you and that you receive from. But you need a church where you're giving, where you're contributing as well, where you're helping the church to grow. And we need a bond to it, one that doesn't, the first time things don't go our way, the first time, there's a vote that doesn't please us, that we cut and run, but a place where we are loyal to. And I hope you've got that kind of church, church family, church body that you're part of, and again, that you're giving and receiving, that you're not just sitting back, in the pew saying, bless me if you can, Lord, but that you're involved and you're working and you're helping, whatever your gifts are. You may not can sing in the choir, you may not can teach Sunday school, but maybe you can carry out the trash, just some place where you can be part and serve in a church you have a bond to. Paul had that with his family at Antioch. I hope you have a place where you can, where you have that kind of bond. If you don't, I'd love to invite you to Poplar Grove. If you're in the Concord area, if not, I'm sure there's a church somewhere around you where you can fit in, where you can belong, and where you can have a healthy relationship with God and your church family. Have a good day. We'll see you here tomorrow morning.